Now, Doctor, you indicated that you testified a number of times in courts of the Commonwealth. Is that right?
Correct.
And did you interview the defendant every one of those times?
I believe I did. I'm not thinking, there may have been some reason I didn't, but I'm not recalling that. But basically, I do try to examine the people unless there's some legal reason I can't.
Right, well, you would try to do it, correct?
Right.
Right. But there might be a reason why you can't.
Possibly. I'm not thinking of
That's
any
fine.
specific situation, but maybe there have been some.
I think you mentioned, like, if there was a suicide,
Right.
would that be a situation where you wouldn't be able to interview the person? Or any other reason that they might be dead? If they're not available, you wouldn't be able to,
Right.
right?
Or a person, say, had suffered terrible brain injury and couldn't communicate or something of that sort.
Okay, I'm just, if you'd be kind enough just to speak up louder, maybe if you could just move the chair forward and bring the mic a little closer to you, because it's very hard to hear you over here.
I think I'll stand. Give it a go.
I'm not asking you to stand if you don't
No,
want to.
no, that's fine.
Thank you.
That's fine.
With respect to Mr. Loya, is it your opinion that he did understand the wrongfulness of his acts?
He had the capacity to understand wrongfulness generally and had a capacity to know that it legally was criminal. He thought it was morally justified,
Well-
given what had happened to him, but he did understand that to kill someone is against the law and to some degree morally wrong. Hence, he had to die as well.
And you've seen a copy of this document, correct? The 256-page?
Yes.
And does he not describe his plan in this as an evil plan?
He may have.
With respect to your diagnosis of Mr. Loya, does that manifest itself in any way with maintaining eye contact?
To some degree it can, but he made intermittent eye contact. Doesn't generally, I mean, he's not always not making eye contact. He does make eye contact. Maybe not as much as other folks might, but he does.
All right, so the not making eye contact, would that be something you'd be looking for, though, in coming up with the diagnosis?
It could be consistent with the diagnosis.
Okay. And you mentioned he had an incredible memory, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
What did he say about his high school years?
He didn't address them much in his memoirs. I think in the video he did in Pennsylvania when he pulled off to the road and was having these physical symptoms, I think it may have been in that he said, you know, I dated a girl in high school and I don't remember her name or I don't remember her face. So he has said some things like that. He remembers things that are important to him. I mean, and that's true of all of us. I mean, some things get burned in our memory because they're connected with certain things. And what we had for supper a week ago Wednesday is irrelevant. There's no reason to remember stuff that doesn't have an emotional connection.
When you refer to his memoirs, just so we're all understanding what you're talking about, again, you're talking about the Loya Wars.
Yes.
And isn't it true in there that he says, other than the swim team, he doesn't remember much about high school at all?
I don't remember that particularly, but I think that that's correct. I mean, it was a time he was not particularly involved with other people, but could he tell you chapter and verse if there was a Star Wars #3 that came out when he was in high school? He could tell you every sequence of that kind of thing because that was important to him. But much of the other stuff was not particularly important to him and not kind of worth remembering. It's not that you remember absolutely everything. It has to have some reason-ish. But even when you have a reason, his capacity to keep details, and particularly the time in Kodiak, which was, in my opinion, pathologically intense capacity for memory.
And I apologize if I mispronounced this word, but you said he was almost eidetic, is that what it was?
Eidetic, yeah.
Eidetic, right? Well, that's just not remembering what's important to you. That's photographic memory, right?
But not for everything, okay? The term photographic memory kind of refers to people with a very intense capacity to remember. Eidetic memory is a notch up from there. And then there's hyperthymesia, which is this incredible capacity, but usually in a person who doesn't really function in the world that well. So he has, in my opinion, a very intense memory, but not for everything, okay? So what he had for lunch the day before yesterday, where he is now, may not be something he remembers, because it's not important. But the details of the relationship and everything that happened in Alaska, that ended up in that memoir.
Now, you had mentioned something about how when he was in high school, he was called Lurch.
Well, it was actually, I think, middle school, pre-high school.
And do you know who that character Lurch was?
I think it's from the Addams Family.
How would you describe him from the Addams
I
Family?
the image that comes to me, I didn't spend a lot of time watching, but it's a tall, geeky person in the background.
Tall, right?
Yeah.
Do you know how tall he was when he was in middle school?
I assume he was a tall person, relative.
Do you know how tall he is now?
He's fairly tall. I mean, he's 6 feet, 6'1", something like that. I mean, I don't.
6'3"?
Might be. He's tall.
And you were talking about how he perceived himself as different, and he liked to, again, lack for a better word, but play online, video games and
No, I
stuff.
don't. He didn't like to perceive. He disliked feeling that he was different and struggled to understand it.
Right, I'm
He
not
didn't
saying
like
he
it.
liked, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If I could rephrase the question,
Sure.
I said, he understood he was different, but he liked playing video games online.
Yes,
Okay. And that would have been well before this incident happened, right?
correct.
Okay. You had mentioned that the rules were very important to him. Is that fair to say?
Generally, yes.
And that's why he chose the Coast Guard to
Yeah,
join?
yeah, it was among the reasons, yes.
And would he understand, with the disease that you claim that he had, would he understand what the rules meant within the Coast Guard? Like, I can't do this,
Yes.
can't do that?
Yes.
And he was what? What was his rank compared to Lisa's?
He was one notch up from her. He was an IT2 and she was an IT3, which is one below, in my understanding.
And just if you know, are there rules against fraternizing between different ranks in the Coast Guard?
I assume so. Fraternizing, it's not good to have a personal relationship, but you can be friends with people of different ranks. I mean, they don't prohibit friendships. The fraternization suggests something more intense than that.
Going over to a lower ranks apartment at 11 o'clock, bringing a bottle of vodka, would that be something that would be frowned upon by the rules of the Coast Guard?
It might be.
And with respect to the socialization, or socializing, not socialization, I'm sorry, socializing, Well, it was in Kodiak. Are you aware that he would go to dances?
I think there were occasions when, I don't know that they were dances, but there was dancing.
Okay.
Okay, I think they went to a club and people were dancing and he would get on the dance floor too on occasion
And dance, right?
and dance.
And you're aware that in his memoirs, other than the 200 some odd pages, there was also a document he wrote about the women he had known during his life. right?
Correct.
You know how many women were mentioned in that document?
I don't, there were several.
And are you aware that there was a time where he lived with one woman
Yes.
for a number of months?
Yes,
So that all factored into your opinion, correct?
yeah.
Now, mentioning the morale events that they'd have at Kodiak, you indicated that when he first met Lisa, that Lisa had sought him out, right?
Correct.
And did you say something about how he felt about how she was acting towards him then?
He thought she was very open, pleasant, easy to talk with. He enjoyed talking with her.
Would you say that he had a crush on her?
The answer is no.
Okay. Not just at that point, but at any point, right?
Correct.
Now, did you have an opportunity to read these so-called lawyer wars?
Oh, yes. Is this a memory test?
Well, I've actually showed you, so you don't have to rely on me, if that's all right. To be kind enough to read from here to that sentence. To yourself.
At the bottom of that paragraph?
No, I'll just point out again, just so I'm sure. Just see what it says. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and then just right here, again, to the, word from there to the end of that paragraph.
Okay, I don't know the time frame that's being referred to in this quotation.
Does that help?
It has a date, but I'm trying to recall what this would have been post.
Just one more, please.
Yeah. The date was November 2012, right after, 2 months after the thing.
Right, you know what he's talking about in that situation, right?
Yes.
Then he writes here. Does that help refresh your memory?
Well, I don't remember that sentence, but I remember the general tenor of that book and those encounters, yes.
Well, after reading that, is it your opinion that he wasn't infatuated with her, having a crush on her?
Oh, I think she was very important to him, but I don't think it was a crush in the conventional romantic sense. He had an intense feeling for her of a positive nature, but it was not sexual.
I became intoxicated by the smell. She continued being very close to me and gently touching me, which she had never done before. The very friendly yet flirty attitude she had this evening with me made me feel great, even if it was another case of sexual assault done by her. I was really liking being around Lisa again. Right? You remember reading that, Lisa, right?
Yes, yes.
And at the end, about that very incident he's talking about there, I have declared it the best day of the year for me, right?
Yes.
You had indicated that there was an incident that you relied upon concerning packages that were left at Lisa and Anna's house. Do you remember that?
Correct.
Now, is it your memory that he was told before he went to pick up that package that not to go unless he called, or was that after he went to pick up that package?
My recollection is it was after, because Anna was upset that he had showed up with a colleague to take a big package that had been left at the house.
And then you had indicated, I think, that there was a gathering at his house where he actually told some of the people there about his version of the incident that took place, right?
Correct.
Okay, and I think you said that he may have told him. He clearly says he did in his memoirs, right, that he did tell him.
Yes, I think he did. That was my recollection. I was doing it from memory, but I think like a, yeah. that it-
It was just a version,
Okay.
fine, just want to make sure we're all clear on that. Now, you were indicated, well, let me ask you, his socializing, how often, in your opinion, would he socialize with others?
Several times a week, maybe. Not a lot. I don't think, mostly he was by himself, but on the weekends or morale events, or if someone was having a gathering, or he had a gathering at his place where they brought, everybody brought a computer and they had a kind of several computers interacting with one another, maybe through the internet. I mean, so but he was not out every night clubbing and going to bars and stuff like that.
And as part of your diagnosis, would he be the kind of person that would seek out the social environment?
Not generally, no.
And yet, when he was coming back, he's the one that called up the prostitutes, right, in Colorado?
Well, I believe the first time he had encounters with prostitutes were in Salt Lake City on his way across country. And in part, that was because the counselor he had seen who had encouraged him to reported officially to the Coast Guard Investigative Services, said, because of this situation, you may have trouble in the future with women. So being kind of concrete when he got to Salt Lake City, and I believe this was the first time he had any exposure with escorts/prostitutes. Concretely, I think I'll call up an escort service and see if I'm having any problem with women. So that's how that happened. And it happened several other times in the next year and a half or almost two, including right before this event.
February 4th, right?
Correct,
There was a prostitute hired on February 4th at the Quality Inn, right?
correct.
And he's the one that reached out to her, right?
Yes.
When you interviewed on the 3 occasions, Mr. Loya, how would you describe his demeanor with you?
Quiet, fairly soft-spoken, such that with a beard, sometimes you can do a little bit of lip reading, but he was kind of so soft-spoken that I would sometimes have trouble hearing him, might ask. But he was, as with others, he was very intent with me that I should know the whole story, beginning to end, what he did, what was done to him, and sometimes he would talk for several minutes in a row as he filled in all of these little details, if you will.
Did he show any emotion during that period of time?
Oh, yes, he did. Well, some. He was tearful on occasion.
When was he tearful?
I remember at the end, he was tearful as he was saying, basically, I was crazy then, and I did a terrible thing, and he was crying. I'm just so sorry it happened. But he also cried at other times when he was talking but he wasn't crying a lot, and he wasn't particularly kind of inordinately depressed. He was very candid, he was very straightforward, he was not trying to portray himself in a positive, overly positive kind of life. It was very kind of matter of fact, almost so flat as to be, again, a kind of sense. And that was the first sense I think I had. There is something unusual here. And that led me to push down the track of what is going on. He is so flat as he is talking about this stuff. And then basically filled out my curiosity by going into his background and finding out. As I say, in this case, I know more about him than I think I have in any other case.
So what was he sorry for?
For killing Lisa.
So he showed remorse to you?
Yes.
Did you see anywhere else in the records where he showed remorse concerning that killing?
He may have showed it to some of the other examiners, but before it happened, he was not feeling remorse. He was feeling morally justified to go do this. But if I do it, my life must be taken because that's moral too. But in terms of, I did not think he was putting on a show for me of remorse. That, okay, here comes a psychiatrist from the prosecutor, in fact, and I'm going to pretend I'm remorseful. He means it. I think he does still wish that his life would be taken.
I'm sorry, but did you say he did or he didn't show remorse to somebody else in the records? For the killing of Lisa?
I think he might have showed it to Dr. Daigneault. The Bridgewater records are pretty behavioral. I don't think they really kind of, to the degree he thinks he should be dead, is equivalent to feeling remorse for killing Lisa, in my mind. I think he might have expressed remorse to Dr. Daigneault, who saw him many, many, many times. And I'm not recalling it in the Bridgewater record one way or the other.
And what about remorse for shooting Anna?
He very much wanted not to do that. He had brought handcuffs so that she would be not affected by that. He wanted her to be, quote, immobilized, so it could be just he and Lisa.
Look, is there something in the record you can point to where he's shown remorse for shooting Anna?
I think the remorse was for, the remorse that he showed and expressed with me was for both, okay? But it was mostly for Lisa, who was, in fact, more important to him. But it was not like I didn't mind shooting Anna.
Okay. Are you finished?
Yep.
I'm sorry. No, you were able to review more than just his, again, what we've been calling his memoirs, right?
Yeah.
You're aware that he typed up a sheet for Operation Purple Rebel?
Correct.
It's Exhibit 131, Your Honor. If you'd be kind enough just to read this part right here on the secondary objectives, right there.
Yes.
Now, obviously, that was written before he carried
Yeah.
out the operation, right?
Yes.
But what was his secondary objective with respect to Anna?
Make her safe, okay? Secure and make safe high-value target, Anna Trubnikova, okay? So he wants to secure her,
Says more than that, doesn't it?
AKA, quote, the nose.
But he doesn't say to you he felt any remorse for shooting at the person he was trying to keep safe and wounding her, correct?
She was not the target. They were both behind the mattress. He wanted, he says it, I got to secure her, meaning she's in handcuffs, she's secure, make sure she is safe, okay, while I go after the main objective, which is to right this monstrous wrong that he perceived.
Was he aware when you spoke with him that Anna actually had been wounded?
I assume so. I don't have a specific recollection of that one way or the other.
Well,
That Anna was wounded. I think he knew when I saw him, which was over a year and a half, about a year and a half after. I think he knew that Anna was injured in the event. I don't know anything to the contrary. I think that he did know that, certainly by that time.
Well, you met with him after he was charged in the Superior Court, correct?
Correct.
And at least one or more of those charges involved the wounding of Anna, correct?
Correct.
Now, you had mentioned something about page 7?
Page 7,
Page
yes.
7, right. Do you know if he knew whether or not Lisa got a page 7?
I don't.
And you had mentioned something about, in the memoirs and such, do you know what he referred to Lisa as? A nickname, so to speak?
I think he called her the Spanish word for witch, B-R-U-J-A. I don't know how to pronounce that well. Maybe you could help me?
I don't, but it's,
Ruja?
right, he used the Spanish word for witch
Yeah.
for her, right?
Yes.
Okay. And he had mentioned to you a number of times he deserved to die, correct?
Correct.
But did he indicate how it is that he deserved to die? In other words, why didn't he just shoot himself?
That would be wrong.
What did,
That would be wrong. He would welcome someone else killing him, but he can't kill himself. He can be killed, but it's wrong for him to kill himself.
and did he tell you at any point how it is that he had helped or had planned for him to be killed, aside from the suicide by cop?
I'm not recalling any.
You don't recall him talking about getting in a fight in jail and having that person kill him, or hiring a gangster in jail to kill him?
Oh, post-event.
Right.
Yes, yes, yes.
Tell the jurors about that. How did he plan to have himself killed after he got caught?
Have someone else kill him.
Now, you had mentioned that there were signs and omens that played a role in this case, correct? From videos that you saw, and he mentioned that they came, the video games he played in Star Wars, right?
Correct.
What omens are referring to in Star Wars that he thought would be significant to him?
I made an analogy that it is my impression, I'm not into Star Wars, but there are real people, played by actors, and then there's also this complicated magical stuff that goes on, and techie kind of stuff, and interplanetary travel and stuff. And sometimes I think there are omens in these situations.
But,
My impression.
but
I
you
might
can't
be-
refer to any, right? When you said Star Wars, you're just using that as an example, not based in anything that he told you, right?
Correct.
Okay, fair enough. Now, you had mentioned something about how he had even taken some X-Lax, correct?
Correct.
What was the reason for him taking the X-Lax?
That he wanted to move his bowels before the event, because when he would be killed, in the process of being killed, it was his understanding that as the person was dying, they would evacuate their bowels.
Okay. And yet, you mentioned something about setting up cardboard cutouts at his apartment in the Chesapeake and oiling the floors and things of that nature?
Yes.
Okay, and you don't see any inconsistency with those two things? Not wanting to have a messy body once he got killed, and yet trying to make it as difficult as he could for the police that were going to go to his apartment in Chesapeake?
No, I don't see a connection. I mean, that was his kind of, I'm dead, but see, I'm one jump ahead of you, a kind of thing. And the page 7, that was key. That was what he wanted them to see after they had to deal with his little diversions and making things difficult for them.
And you mentioned, did you not, that one of the things he was considering was whether a friend of his would have been assigned to the same place he was, right?
Correct.
That wasn't Jacob Heller, was it?
No.
Do you know who it was?
I think the person's name, I think it was blank. My mind might be blank, but I think it was blank or a B word. It was someone he had known He wasn't a close friend, to my knowledge, but it was someone who shared, I think, interests, and he thought, well, maybe early on in his new assignment, maybe this will pick up and my friend will come here and I'll be able to not be so involved with it.
So he wasn't a close friend, but this is somebody that would have made the plan go away?
He wondered whether that was the case, yes. I don't know that he was into the plan yet. It was, best recollection, it was closer in time to when he started there. It wasn't something that happened October, November, December of just the few months prior to this.
And you had indicated that he was a personality that was not prone to violence, is that right?
Correct.
Now, as part of your materials that you examined, did you examine 133A, Exhibit 133A, and 133B? Take your time, just look at those and let us know.
Yes.
And that was part of the materials that you examined, isn't that right?
I don't know that I ever saw these pictures before.
Okay, so you didn't know that he actually made those pictures and put them on the drive that he had on his neck?
I don't believe I did, no.
And this is well, I'm sorry, did you say you did see these before or did not?
Did not.
Okay.
To the best of my recollection. I mean, there's a mountain of material here and I can't always, I think I would have remembered that. I might have seen it, but I don't have,
Right?
yeah. That's part of his documentation of everything.
Now, you had an opportunity to view in its entirety the GoPro camera, correct?
Yes,
And specifically focusing on the time where he was in the room upstairs,
yes,
you said it's about 10 minutes, right?
correct.
Did you see a knife in that video?
I don't think I did. The video is there, and sometimes there's something that looks like a hand, but I never saw anything that I could identify as a knife.
And did he indicate to you in any of your interviews when he decided to shoot, where he decided to shoot?
I don't think he did. He stated they were behind the mattress, and he shot into the mattress.
What did he say? I shot into the mattress where I thought Lisa was, or I just shot in the mattress?
I think he indicated it was in the area where Lisa was, but it looks, they both were behind it, and at least what I saw, it's kind of on an angle, and they were both very close together. So I think he meant to shoot Lisa. I don't have any doubt about that. Once he couldn't stab her, it was back to, okay, we're now into the scenario, and I think that that was back to Operation Purple Rebel.
Did he tell you how many shots he shot?
I think he shot all the ones that were in the gun. I mean, it was not just one shot, it was, I think he kind of,
Well, did he tell you how many? Did he say, I shot
I did-
15, emptied the clip,
I
replaced
didn't
it?
ask him the number of shots, and
Okay.
he didn't volunteer it. I mean, it was many, many shots. It was not particularly relevant for my purposes.
Fair enough. And during your interviews with Mr. Lawyer, when you talked about Tawny, the dog, how did he react emotionally, if he did at all?
How did he react emotionally?
Yeah, when he was discussing his dog, Tawny.
He was, he recounted it pretty matter-of-factly, if you will, and how terrible it was, and how he never wanted contact with his father. That was his state of mind at the time, and felt he had been deceived, and felt that his father had not taken care of his dog as he had promised.
But
And
he
he
wasn't-
showed some emotion at that. and
But
was-
tell
yeah.
us what the emotion was, if you can.
Well, I mean, there was sadness as he talked about how terrible that made him feel.
And you had indicated that part of your reason for the diagnosis that you made was because he wasn't a violent personality, he wasn't prone to violence, and he was very truthful, is that right?
Generally, yes.
Well, what do you mean by generally?
Well, he didn't have a pattern of getting into bar fights and attacking people or thought to be an argumentative, nasty person.
And he was honest, right?
By and large, yes.
Are you aware that there was an incident that took place at the Bridgewater State Hospital concerning a fight?
There was an incident, yes.
All right, and that's in a report that you read, right?
Yes.
All right. And at first, he said that he was not the instigator, correct? Is that right?
Yes. I don't recall all the details, but eventually he was regarded as the instigator in that instance. That's my best recollection.
Why was he regarded as the instigator if he said he didn't do it?
They regarded him apparently as the instigator. Maybe he agreed to it. I don't know. You'll have to, again, I don't have an eidetic memory, okay? So,
Fair enough. If you'd be kind enough just to look, you can read this entire section here, but that is being an excerpt from the Bridgewater State report. Just take your time.
okay.
There was a video that showed he was the aggressor, correct?
If I could read it,
Take your time.
can I read it aloud?
That's fine with me, please do.
Okay. Per review of the video footage by IPS, Institutional Something Services, Mr. Loya was the physical aggressor in this altercation. Mr. Loya pushed the other patient and then raised his fist in an aggressive manner.
Now, with respect to that, number one, doesn't that show that he lied before when he said that he was not the aggressor?
I would not characterize it as a lie if I could tell you what my impression is.
Go ahead.
That Mr. Loya is very unlikely to push anyone unless he is provoked. So in his mind, the aggressor might have been something that that individual did or said. And in response, Mr. Loya pushed him, didn't punch him, but raised his fist in an aggressive manner.
Can you
And
show me?
that's-
I'm sorry, finish your answer. I thought you were done.
Answer.
Yeah, I thought you were done.
Are you done, Doctor?
Yes.
Okay. Can you show me in the record where it indicates that something provoked him to do that?
This looks like a summary of the Bridgewater record for an incident in February this year. I don't know that I've seen the Bridgewater record for this year. I've seen a report from it. So this looks like it's a summary
Right.
of things that things that you had typed up?
I believe that we have the Bridgewater records. If we could get those dates so he can view the record in entirety, it'd be fine.
I don't think they've been made exhibit.
No, I don't
Counsel,
think
did
they have
you, did you
either.
request them to come up from the clerk's office?
Did this morning.
Yeah, we did this morning.
Do you have the Bridgewater Hospital records?
I can, let me go to.
Why don't you do it?
Yes, that'd be fine if I could see them. It's gonna be February 6, 2007.
Jurors, you're welcome to stand up, take a stretch while he's looking.
Have you had a chance to look at those?
Yes,
Have you seen those before?
I don't believe I have.
And you had read in the to see what the detail of the fight was, right?
No.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Anything further of this gentleman?
Just a few, Your Honor.
Well, Not
that's
so
the-
fast, Dr. Kelly. Not so fast.
That was the first time, Doctor, you heard of this incident where there was some pushing going on between he and another fellow at the state hospital?
It might have been in a recent report, but I'm not specifically, but it might have been in a recent report. But
I'm sorry.
summary report. It might have been. But
Refresh-
generally, he's been at Bridgewater and has not been any trouble to anybody. That's the only incident that I'm aware of now. And this was just, and so it's a tough place.
And that particular incident, in fact, happened on the anniversary of this case and his birthday.
Yes.
I think you told us earlier, you're some 40-plus years as it relates to criminal responsibility. You've done somewhere between 300 and 400 cases.
Approximately, yeah.
And I think you've said, if I picked you up correctly, there were more records and more information on this case than any other that you've worked on?
Probably, yes.
Yeah, redirect, and recross and so forth. They're not to rehash.
I couldn't agree
It's
more.
to,
Your Honor.
well, then don't do it.
You indicated the Bridgewater State Hospital records are behavioral records. Can you help us out? What do you mean by that? You said the Bridgewater State Hospital records are more of a behavioral nature.
Yes. Was referring to the reports by the doctors there among the ones that might be sent to court. They don't appear to know much about the background of this case, all the stuff that preceded it, just how he's behaving now.
Very well, nothing further, Your Honor.
Just one thing. You'd indicated that that incident at the hospital happened on the anniversary of the actual incident itself?
It was the day after, if you will, and there had
Right.
been some encounter between the two of them, according to the records that preceded it.
That's all right.
Thank you, sir. You may step aside. Thank you.
Dr. Holtzman, please.
Please.
Holtzman, he's right outside the door. Where did I put my thing with all the doctors? Here, this one.
Sir, raise your right hand, please. I swear testimony you give to the court and the jury and the issues now pending between the Commonwealth defendant, the bar, speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth, so help you God.
I do.
Doctor, voice carries better if you stand.
Okay,
If you need this chair, you certainly can use it.
thank you.
Walter, why don't you take that back, please? Thank you.
With respect to the last witness, I think I gave him an exhibit book. Did we get that back? I just don't want him to put it in his folder and think that.
Yes,
Okay,
yep, thank you.
Sir, in a nice loud voice, could you state your name and spell your last name?
Yes, it's David W. Holtzen. My last name is spelled Holtzen.
And how are you currently employed, sir?
I work at Bridgewater State Hospital as a designated forensic psychologist.
Now, I notice you're leaning over into the mic. You can move the mic up, actually, so it'll be a little easier. Thank you. Okay. And what is a designated forensic psychologist?
DFPs do court-ordered evaluations in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts of men that are ordered to Bridgewater State Hospital.
And could you tell us a little bit about your educational background?
Yes, I went to the University of Nebraska and I obtained a bachelor's degree in psychology, and then I obtained a master's degree and a PhD from Boston College, and after that I did a postdoctoral fellowship through the Harvard Medical School at Cambridge Hospital in neuropsychology.
And you indicated you're currently employed at the Bridgewater State Hospital?
Yes,
Did you have any employment prior to that?
many years ago, yes. I worked at Bridgewater State Hospital since June of 1999.
Excuse me. And sir, did you have an occasion to conduct an examination with respect to criminal responsibility? There is for which you're here today?
Yes,
And who would have been the person that you are seeking to evaluate?
Mr. Loya, Adrian Loya.
Do you see him in court here today?
Yes, I do.
Can you put him up for us, please?
Yes, he is the bearded gentleman with the blue shirt and the tie.
May the record reflect he's identified the defendant, Your Honor.
So noted.
And could you tell us, in order to conduct this evaluation, did you reference any other materials?
Yes, I did.
And could you tell us what those materials were?
So I reviewed Mr. Loya's Bridgewater State Hospital medical record. I also reviewed his Massachusetts criminal record. I also reviewed the documents that were provided to the hospital that a Detective John Noble authored. One was a narrative of the alleged offenses, and another one had to do with reading Mr. Loya's rights when he was arrested.
And could you tell us, how is it that you did conduct this examination?
So I interviewed Mr. Loya twice, once on July 27th and once on July 28th of 2015.
And along with the information you just discussed, is that what you used to form your opinion?
Yes. Also, previously, I had evaluated Mr. Loya for competence to stand trial earlier in the year, and I did some psychological testing at that time and incorporated those results into my thinking about him diagnostically when I conducted the criminal responsibility evaluation.
So as a result of all of the information you reviewed and the interviews you had with Mr. Loya, were you able to form an opinion concerning his criminal responsibility?
Yes, I was.
And what is that opinion, please?
It's my opinion that Mr. Loya was criminally responsible for the alleged offenses.
And before you spoke to Mr. Loya, did you give him the so-called lame warning
Yes, I did.
on each time that you interviewed him?
Yes.
And tell us about the process you followed in order to come to the opinion that you did, please.
Well, as I said, I reviewed the detective's narrative about the alleged offenses, and then I asked Mr. Loya if he would provide his account of his behavior on that date and around that date, and also asked him questions about his mental state around the time of those alleged offenses.
And tell us what he said when you asked him your questions.
So Mr. Loya stated that he had not been in any form of mental health treatment in the months prior to the alleged offense. He said that he was having symptoms around the time of the alleged offense, including on that date. Specifically, he said that he was suicidal and had been suicidal for a period of time, and was also feeling like his life was over, felt hopeless, and had talked some about sort of the chronicity of those symptoms.
Now, did you discuss with him at any depth his suggestions of suicidality, if that's the right way to pronounce it?
Could you say that again?
Yes, did you discuss with him during your evaluation the suicidality that he was complaining of, if he was complaining of it?
Yes, that was one of the symptoms he said he had at the time.
And what did he say about that?
So Mr. Loya stated that his plan, he had lived in Virginia at the time, and his plan was to drive from his home in Virginia to Massachusetts to kill the victim and then have him be killed by responding law enforcement officials.
And you say him be killed, you mean Mr. Loya, of course.
Yes.
Okay. Now, did you ask Mr. Loya about his personal background?
I did, yes.
And did he say anything about where he might have been born?
I understand that he was born in El Paso, Texas.
And did he indicate where he lived most recently?
He lived most recently in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Did he indicate he had lived anywhere else?
I understand that he lived in Alaska.
Do you know what driver's license he had?
He had a Texas driver's license.
Did he discuss with you anything about his family?
His words to me about his family were quite telling and sparse at the same time. He told me that he did not have a relationship with his father. He stated that he didn't really have a close relationship with either of his siblings. He stated that he had a brother and a sister. He stated that he'd never been close to his siblings. He also indicated that he wasn't terribly close with his mother either. At one point, he said he didn't know his mother's phone number, but then he made another statement at another time indicating that he had called her prior to driving to Massachusetts from Virginia. And then also he spoke some, not in the interview I conducted with him in July of 2015, but earlier in the year when I did another evaluation of him, he discussed a dog that he was quite fond of that was his pet.
Did he say anything about that dog?
Yes, he did.
What did he say about the dog?
So it was a golden retriever mix. He said that it was born, she was born in October of 1997, and that he came to possess the dog about 2 years later, and had lived with the dog for a period of time. But then when he was involved in the Coast Guard, he did not live with the dog for a period of years, and then lived with the dog again for a period of time. And then more recently, his dog was living, his father was supposedly taking care of the dog, which at that point was quite elderly, I understand, was maybe like 16 or 17 years old.
And did he say what happened to the dog?
He did. Mr. Loya stated that he had left his dog in his father's care, and that at one point he had spoken to his father, and the father had told him that the dog was doing well. And when Mr. Loya then visited his father and his dog, shortly thereafter, he found the dog to not be doing well. In fact, to be quite ill. He described the dog as being matted and emaciated, and he told me that he gave the dog a cheeseburger, and that the dog ate the cheeseburger right away and perked up, and but the dog was in not good shape, according to Mr. Loya, and he immediately took it to a veterinarian, and the dog was euthanized, I understand, right then, because it was too far gone.
And when he was relating the story about the dog, did you make observations of his emotional state?
Yes, I did.
Tell us about that, please.
So, Mr. Loya relayed that account of his dog in a pretty flat, emotionless manner, which, when I spoke at that time with his treatment team, that was in contrast to how he presented to his treatment team when he told a similar story to them about his pet.
Now, did you discuss with Mr. Loya his background concerning his schooling and such?
I don't recall that I did. In his medical record at the hospital, I understand that he graduated from high school, and he was not in any special education classes. I understand he hadn't been held back from any grades, and I do remember asking him a question about his higher education. I believe he said that he had gone to college for, it was like a year and a half, and he said he initially studied psychology, but he didn't elaborate, sort of implied that he might have studied something else after that, but didn't make any further remarks about that.
Did he indicate to you what he did after high school?
He indicated that he had gone to what he called boot camp, I believe was his term, for service in the U.S. Coast Guard. And he stated that he was in the Coast Guard for about 10 years.
Did he mention anything about a lifeguard?
He did say he was a lifeguard prior to joining the Coast Guard.
And then he told you he joined the Coast Guard for a 10-year term?
Yes.
And did he say why he joined the Coast Guard?
He did.
What did he say?
He communicated to me that he joined the Coast Guard because he was the kind of person that needed to be told what to do, and thought that the Coast Guard would be a good match for that.
Did he indicate what rank he had achieved?
I asked him about his rank, and I asked him about his highest rank, and he said he was an E5.
Did he tell you, although he was in the Coast Guard, if he was in any other subspecialty?
I don't recall that he stated a name of a subspecialty, but I understand that he worked fixing computers and telephones.
Did he indicate if he'd ever had his rank reduced?
He had not had his rank reduced.
Now, did he tell you something about something that would have happened around November of 2014?
November of 2014?
Yes.
I'd probably have to refresh my memory on that.
May I quickly?
Please.
Just if you'd read this to yourself and just let me know. When
Sure.
I'm just read. However, to where the next page.
Okay. Okay.
Does that help refresh your memory?
Yes, it does.
What did he say about that?
So Mr. Loya stated that he had submitted paperwork to the Coast Guard in November of 2014, seeking to end his service with the Coast Guard.
And did you ask him why he had done that?
I did.
What did he say, if anything?
He communicated to me that he had failed some tests that were required for promotion, and it was his belief that he would be kicked out of the Coast Guard for not advancing. So he stated that that was his reason for submitting his discharge paperwork.
And did you ask him what his plans were for when he left the Coast Guard?
I did.
And what did he say, if anything?
He said that he really had no plans after the Coast Guard because he stated that he did not plan on being alive.
And did he say if it was a spur-of-the-moment decision to leave the Coast Guard?
He said it was not. He specifically said that he had weighed the pros and cons of staying in the Coast Guard.
And did you ask him about his medical history?
I asked him some about his medical history, and there was also some information in his Bridgewater State Hospital medical records as well.
And what did you see there?
So I understand that Mr. Loya was diagnosed with acid reflux and takes, or at least at that time, took medication for it.
I'm sorry.
Acid reflux.
And what is that?
It's excess acid in the esophagus that, if not treated, can cause damage to the esophagus.
Heartburn?
Yes.
And please go on.
And he had an endoscopy that was conducted at some point, I don't know when, that was most likely related to his diagnosis of acid reflux. He also had some corrective procedure done on his eyes for his vision.
Did he say anything about sleeping?
About sleeping, yes. He said that he, at a point in time, he had a very difficult time sleeping and started to take medication, over-the-counter medication for it. And he stated he became addicted to it.
Did he indicate there was a time he stopped taking it?
Yes, I believe he stated that he started in December of 2012 and then stopped taking it was Benadryl, and had stopped taking that medication. I'm not sure if it was in January of 2014 or January of 2015, somewhere around there, but he had taken it for a year or longer.
And did he indicate what had happened after he stopped taking it?
Well, he said that prior to taking it, in addition to having difficulty sleeping, that he was having nightmares. And he said when he was taking the Benadryl every night that the nightmares went away. When he stopped taking the Benadryl, he said that the nightmares returned.
Would he describe what those nightmares were?
He did. I asked him, and he stated that he would have nightmares of the victim in this case as standing over him in his nightmares.
And did he mention anything about a dog?
Yes, he mentioned that he wasn't sure if he actually had a dream or if he actually thought that he saw his deceased dog curled up on his bed.
Did you ask him about his drinking of alcohol?
I did.
And what did he say about that, if anything?
He said that he didn't really, that he drank very rarely and that he didn't really care for the taste of beer, so didn't really drink much.
Did he indicate something might happen when he drank beer?
Other than stating that he didn't really care for the taste of it, not that I can recall.
Let's read this to yourself if it helps.
Yes.
Does that refresh your memory?
It does. He stated that when he drank beer that he would get heartburn.
Now, did you notice if there was anything on his medical record concerning the heartburn or anything?
Yes, he was taking medication for it when I evaluated him.
And what's GERD?
It's it's like an acronym that basically means heartburn.
And did you discover if he had any other medical issues?
He did, and I can't recall what they were. I do recall that when we were talking about his medical history, what struck me was that he didn't have anything that really would have impaired his work.
Was there anything about a hiatal hernia?
Yes, he did say he had that.
And what is that?
Well, I'm not a medical doctor, but it's a problem with the lining of the stomach area.
And did you ask him if he had any legal problems or interactions with law enforcement due to substance abuse?
I did ask him if he had a substance abuse problem, if he thought he had one.
And what did he say?
He said that he couldn't have one because he was in the Coast Guard.
And did you say anything about that?
I did, yes. I suggested to him that it could be possible that somebody could be in the Coast Guard and have a substance abuse problem. And then he communicated to me that in his case, that he was in such close contact with people that had he had a substance abuse problem, it would most certainly have been noticed by the people that he was working with.
Was there any information concerning how often he used alcohol?
I believe he told me just really like once a month.
Did he say anything about arthritis to you?
He stated that he had, or I don't think he stated that actually. I believe it was in his medical record that he has arthritis in his hands.
Now, did you explore whether there's any mental health history?
I did ask him about that.
And what, if anything, did he say?
And that in addition to reviewing his medical record, and I understand that he had, prior to coming to Bridgewater State Hospital, he had never been psychiatrically hospitalized before in his life. I understand that he had been in some kind of treatment or had seen a mental health professional in Kodiak, Alaska, and I do understand that Mr. Loya would not permit the hospital to obtain those outpatient records. Somewhere in his Bridgewater State Hospital medical record, I remember reading that it was written that he had had 9 outpatient sessions with a woman. One point she was described as a social worker. At another point in his medical record, she was described as a psychiatrist. But in any event, I was not able to review those records because he would not sign a release of those records. And he told me and also his treatment team that the sessions that he had with that person weren't helpful for him and made him worse.
Were not.
Were not helpful and made him worse.
And did you ask him if he was given a diagnosis?
I did, and he stated that the woman did not give him a diagnosis.
Did he indicate to you that he thought he did have a diagnosis?
He did.
What did he say, if anything, about that?
Well, he he said some contradictory kinds of things to both me and his treatment team. So he told me that he thought he suffered from schizoid personality disorder. He told me that he had looked that disorder up on the internet at some point in the past and thought that the description that he had read on the internet sort of fit who he thought he was. He told his treatment team initially that an independent medical examiner that had evaluated him had told him that he had schizoid personality disorder, and he said he was very upset by learning that because he didn't think he had it. And then I understand from continuing to read later statements that he had made to his treatment team, he told them he did think that he had that disorder.
And did he explain to you why he thought that he did have that disorder?
Yes, he communicated to me that he is someone who really likes to have his space and be socially isolated and not really socialize with too many people, and someone that really liked to be kind of distant interpersonly.
Did he tell you what he thought, his treatment team thought he was suffering from?
Not that I can recall.
I could just... Is that how refresh your memory?
Yes.
Tell us about that, please.
So he told his treatment team that he does not initiate social activities with others, but if invited, he will participate in those.
And did he indicate to one of the treatment teams something about how he began to function poorly at a certain point?
Could you say that again?
Yes, did he tell one of the treatment team members that he began to function poorly after a certain event in his life?
Yes.
What was that?
He stated that he had, and he told me this as well, that he had some kind of sexualized incident with someone in Kodiak, Alaska, and that he then began to have suicidal thoughts after that, and was quite emotional about that incident.
Did he mention something about having panic attacks?
At one point in my interview for his criminal responsibility, he did.
Tell us about that, please.
He mentioned that he had several things. He, in addition to stating that he had had suicidal ideation every day for a period of time, beginning in October of 2013, he also said that he suffered from panic attacks, and he also said he suffered from nightmares, and that the nightmares were about this sexualized incident, which he later told me was a rape, where he was the victim.
And could you tell us what it is, as specifically as you can, about that incident, the sexualized incident that happened to him? What did he tell you?
He did not go into detail about that at all when I was interviewing him, other than to describe that he worked with this woman who's the victim in this case, and she had invited him over to her home to watch a movie, I believe, under the pretext of watching a movie, while her wife was out of state, and they were in the Coast. They were in the Coast Guard together and worked together. And he went over to her home, and he indicated that they had watched a movie. And then after that, he mentioned that she started making some gestures and making some statements that were quite sexualized, and indicated that she wanted to have sex with him.
And did you do anything with respect to his current hospitalization at the time that you had formed your opinion?
Did I do anything?
Right. What did you do to discover what, if anything, was going on with his current hospitalization at the time you were making your opinion, forming your opinion?
Well, I offered an opinion in my report that I thought that Mr. Loya required psychiatric hospitalization for treatment of major depressive disorder, as he was feeling hopeless and worthless and had sobbed during a few points in my interview with him on July 28th, and was depressed and was continuing to say that he felt like his life was over and that he wanted to die, that he wanted to kill himself or have him be killed.
And do you know if that was done?
Yes, Mr. Loya was committed to Bridgewater State Hospital.
You know whether there were any records generated from that?
There would have been a court order saying that the court had found him to be mentally ill and in need of treatment at Bridgewater State Hospital.
You know what I mean? Would there be records concerning his stay at Bridgewater State Hospital?
Yes, there would be his continued medical record.
And you had indicated that you formed the opinion that he suffered from what at that time?
Major depressive disorder.
And could you tell the jurors what that is?
No, it's a major depression where somebody is feeling significantly low or blue or depressed every day for a period of time without relief, and in addition to that, having other symptoms that form the cluster of major depressive disorder, such as having difficulty sleeping, not taking pleasure in activities that you used to take pleasure in, feeling worthless and helpless and hopeless. And in addition, as I said, when I interviewed Mr. Loya on July 28th, he also was crying at a few different points in the interview, which is consistent with somebody who is depressed.
And do you have an opinion as to when the onset of that major depressive disorder would have been?
Well, yes, in the sense that I offered that diagnosis when I first evaluated Mr. Loya in early March of 2015.
And were there circumstances that you opined contributed to that diagnosis at that time?
Well, yeah, he had just recently been arrested.
And do you have an opinion as to whether that diagnosis had existed prior to the date he had been arrested?
Well, I know that he had said that he had been depressed and suicidal for a period of time, but I really would not have had enough information to form an opinion as to whether he was suffering from a major depression, say a month or two beforehand.
And did you do anything to find out if he was under any current psychoactive medication?
When I saw him in July of 2015, I believe he was taking a medication called Prazosin, and that is a medication that is used to help treat nightmares.
Did you do anything with respect to opine concerning his current mental functioning?
When I saw him in July of 2015?
Yes.
Yes, like I said, I interviewed him and reviewed the prior reports that I had written about Mr. Loya, and spoke to his treatment team, read his medical record, and then formed my opinion that he continued to suffer from a major depressive disorder.
And could you tell us, as part of the opinion, what did you base that upon, observations you made or interviews you conducted concerning his mental functioning at that time?
What did I do?
Yes.
Well, I prepared a report for the court stating that I thought that Mr. Loya suffers from major depressive disorder.
And did you base it on observations that you had made of him?
Yes, including both interviews in July of 2015, like I said, plus speaking with his treatment team and also reading the notes that his treatment team wrote about him in his medical record.
Tell us what the observations you had made of him, though.
The observations I made of Mr. Loya was that he had a depressed and flat affect, consistent with somebody that was depressed. Like I said, he had cried a few different points during my interview, sobbed a couple of points in the interview, consistent with somebody who was depressed. Stated that he felt like his life was over, stated that he felt hopeless, and that he was suicidal and wished he were dead, all consistent with somebody who is suffering from a major depression.
Did he indicate to you if he had any present plans to act on that suicide ideation?
He said that he did not have any plans to kill himself at Bridgewater State Hospital. He made a remark that it would be easier for him to kill himself if he were to be discharged from the hospital and go to a regular jail setting.
And did you ask him about any delusional beliefs he may have?
Well, in interviewing him, he did not present to me as someone who had any fixed false beliefs or delusions.
Did you ask him about whether he was continuing to have sleep disturbances?
I did.
And what did he say about that?
I believe he stated that his sleeping had improved some and that his nightmares were much less frequent than they had been when I first saw him earlier in 2015.
Did you ask him about any panic attacks he may have suffered from?
He indicated that he continued to feel anxiety, but he said that he hadn't had a major panic attack in some time.
And were you able to avail yourself of something concerning an official version of the offenses?
Yes, that would have been Detective Noble's narrative.
And did you seek to find out what the defendant's version of the alleged offense were?
Yes, by interviewing him.
Can you tell us what he said about that, if anything?
Yes, he stated that he had a mission. That was
Just
his.
if I could interrupt, I'm sorry for 1 second. Did you first give him the so-called lamb warning?
Yes, I did.
Go ahead, tell us what it is.
And under that under the conditions of of that lamb warning, Mr. Loya communicated to me that he had a devised a mission, was his word, to leave his home in Virginia and drive to Massachusetts and kill the victim in this case, who he described as his rapist, and he stated that that was the first part of his mission, and he said the second part of his mission would then be to start shooting or wage battle with responding police officers so that he would die in a so-called suicide by cop scenario.
Did he indicate to you why he wanted to be shot by the police?
Yes, because he felt that his life was ruined, that he was ruined by the sexual assault that he said he was the victim of.
And what else did Mr. Loya say, if anything?
About,
Did you ask him about his mental health?
yes, I asked him about his mental health around that time, and as I previously testified, he said that he had suicidal thoughts every day for a period of time beginning in October of 2013, and then at some point after that started developing panic attacks, and then after that started to have nightmares, and then he described then having flashbacks of seeing of being in Kodiak, Alaska, in the victim's home, but he did not describe actually reliving a traumatic event, and I asked him pointedly about that.
Before you get to that, did he indicate how these memories would be triggered?
He did.
What did he say?
He indicated that they could be triggered by a feminine smell, was the phrase he used, that they could be triggered by the name Lisa, who he said was the person who sexually assaulted him. And they could be triggered by seeing a situation where someone was in distress or being harmed in some way.
And did he explain to you at some point after going through that type of thing that he'd self-diagnosed himself?
Yes, he said then at some point he went on the internet and believed that he had schizoid personality disorder.
Did he indicate that he had a belief as to how long he'd had it or when he first noticed something?
He communicated that it began sometime in his teenage years. I believe he said around the age of 14 or 15. He's looking back on it, he felt it was around that age range where he started to exhibit what he believes are the features of that personality disorder.
Did he give you an accounting of the event and what took place prior to the event?
Did he give an account of what?
Yes.
Yes, he stated that when he was in his home in Chesapeake, Virginia, he knew that his plan was that he would not live. So he, put his affairs in order by donating some toys, by paying his bills, and by making sure that his home was clean for the next occupant.
Did he indicate that he finished writing something?
He said that he wrote, I believe his phrase was a memoir/suicide note, and he didn't say anything more about that.
Did he indicate if he had called anybody?
He stated that in late January of 2015, he called his mother and called his father and called his best friend to have them hear his voice one last time.
And did he indicate what he had done with respect to Chesapeake to go to Bourne?
He drove. He said he drove.
And did he say why?
Oh, yes, he said he was driving to Massachusetts in order to kill the woman he stated had sexually assaulted him.
Did he say something about the date that he was going to do it on?
He said that his 31st birthday,
Did he indicate what that date would have been?
February 5th.
Did he say where he went on February 5th?
He went to their home.
There being,
Lisa and her wife Anna.
did he say what he did once he got there?
He did. He described what he did.
What did he tell you?
He stated that he parked his vehicle on the road and set the vehicle on fire, and that he approached their home, and it was at night. It was dark. It was at night, and that the door to the home was locked, and so he, I believe his word to me, where he breached the front door and entered the home and went into their bedroom where they had been sleeping and had a knife on him. He said he had a gun on him. And at one point in his description of events, he said that he was masked at the time and that Lisa did not recognize, I guess, his voice, and he took his mask off, and then both Anna and Lisa knew then that it was Mr. Loya.
Did he say if he said anything when she took the mask off?
He did. He said that he was afraid. He was afraid of them. He said that he he told me that he had told Lisa that he had come to stop her from raping anybody else, and that he was going to, I'm not sure what his exact words were, but that he was basically going to get revenge on her having assaulted him by killing her.
Did he indicate whether Lisa was saying anything back to him?
Yes, definitely.
What did he say?
He said that when he had told her, "I'm here because of what you did to me," or something to that effect, that she expressed remorse, repeatedly saying that she was sorry for what had happened, and that she had said to him at one point, "I didn't know what you wanted from me," or "I didn't know what you wanted," or something like that.
And did he indicate he did something with his voice at that point?
He did something with his voice?
Yes.
Not that I can recall.
Did he say he raised his voice?
Oh, he did. He said at that point he got loud, yeah.
And did he say what he said when he got loud?
He said that what he wanted from her was to be able to spend some time with her playing video games and watching The Simpsons, and had told her that she had ruined his life.
Did he indicate if he then said something to Anna?
He told me that he said to Anna, "I don't even know what your deal is."
Did he indicate that Anna responded in some fashion?
He said that she had said to him, "We just got married."
And did he indicate that he then went on to do something else?
Yes, he indicated that he turned his focus back on Lisa. And at one point, he said that he was on his hands and knees, and that she was sitting at that point on the floor of the bedroom. And but then he said he showed her a knife, but he indicated to me that he couldn't do it. He couldn't stab her. And at that point, he brandished a pistol that he said he had.
And what did he say happened next?
He said something about the mattress on the bed, that it had somehow flipped up and it came towards his face, and he pushed it back down on the floor. And then he said he shot into the mattress, and that he heard Lisa make gurgling noises, and then he said, "I left."
Did he indicate how many?
Doctor, are you available tomorrow at 9 a.m.?
Yes, Your Honor.
We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you. Jurors, that's as far as we get for today. Ever mindful of all my admonitions. Enjoy your evening. Please be in the jury room ready to go. 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'll bring you right down and put you to work. Thank you.
Jurors, all rise, please.
The jury is out of the room. Counsel, anything further at this time on the record?
Yes, other than we have the edited version that, I don't know how many copies we have available right now, but one for you and one for Mr. Secretary.
I'm gonna look at it.
That's all, just want to make sure you
You
have it.
see counsel in the lobby on scheduling. Thank you.
All rise.